Today we're going to learn how to make a true bowl. We first start by wedging 2.5 to 3 pounds of clay. When we make pinch pots, we want to make it into a perfect ball, so we're going to do the same thing when working on the wheel. So I compact it. The prettier it looks, the less imperfections. When we attach it to the wheel, we just want to add a small amount of water. And I place it in the center, and I throw it onto the wheel. We want to get our wheel going to a decent speed. We want to apply water, so that way our hands can slide through the clay. And I'm going to go through the first process of trying to center our piece, which is extending our piece, and we call that coning. So I'm going to press the clay between my hands, and as I push, I'm slowly sliding my hands up, and I'm compacting it, and I'm making it so that we have more surface area so we can soften our clay. As you can see, I'm using this portion of my hand right here, so that way we are bringing it up. I always want to make sure that it's wet and shiny, so that way it slides through our hands and doesn't stick to our hands. We are slowly tapering it so that it goes from thick to thin. Once I have it at a decent height, I know that I have added more water to it to soften the clay. Now I want to bring it back down by placing my left hand on the outside and placing my right hand on the top, making sure that they touch. I'm going to bring the clay down. Our left hand is in control to make sure that it stays and doesn't go out of control. So as I push it down, my left hand is going to slowly lessen up, so that way we can create what looks like a hockey puck. As you can see, we're not completely centered. I still need to push down further, and we do have a little bit of a wobble. In order to make it centered, I add more clay to reduce the friction. And using this portion of my hand and pushing away from my body, I'm just going to push all that clay into the center. With my right hand, I'm going to make a fist, and I'm going to push down. So my left hand and my right hand are working together to try to force all that clay to stay in the center. So my left hand pushes away, and my right hand pushes down, just sliding across the top to cover more surface area. When I feel as though I'm centered, I want to make sure that I slowly take my hands away. If I was pushing, and then taking my hands off, you can see how I have forced it to not be centered any longer. But it's okay, I can correct it. So if I push away with my left hand, and I push down with my right hand, and I slowly take my hands away, I've not changed the fact that it's centered. From here we want to go through and start the opening of our bowl. With my left hand, I gently hold it to support it, and I create this shape with my right hand, just using my pinky. As you can see, I'm just using the knuckle right here. I want to make sure that these fingers are out of the way. So my left hand is on the outside. I'm taking this knuckle of my pinky, I'm finding the center, and I'm leaning in. What this does is it already starts to create the curve that I need for my bowl. I try not to push all the way through because we are going to be continuously going back to the center in order to grab the clay. I want to add more water. Once again, I don't have to chase the clay, I can just add it to the side and it will turn around and find its way. I'm going to slow the speed down because we are going to be thinning out the wall. Using my left hand, I'm going to place my middle finger in the center, my thumb is on the outside, and all I'm going to be doing is pulling towards myself to kind of thin this out a little bit. So my finger's in the middle. I'm not pinching yet. My thumb has not done anything. My finger is just gently going through and sliding. Take some of that water out so you can see what happens. So we're starting to get our curve. I'm going to go back to the center, push down a little bit, and then slide a little bit. So once I start to get the curve that I want, now I want to create the wall of the piece. curves. With my thumb underneath and my finger here, I'm going to push down and I'm going to slide. Once they start to meet, that's when I begin to pinch together. So my finger's in the center, I'm pushing down just slightly, and when they meet my thumb, I pinch and I'm pulling up and out at the same time. If I were to just pull out, we'd be creating a plate and we wouldn't be able to bring it back up. So it's important to pull up and out at the same time. Add more water. I'm going to continue. I'm going to push back down in the center slightly. You can see the little dimple that I'm making. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to continue pulling with the same amount of pressure. As I reach the wall, the area that I want to pinch, I'm actually going to put less pressure because I need to make sure that I have a curve. If I continue with the same amount of pressure, it's going to level out and we won't have that curve. So I'm pushing down in the center and I'm lessening my pressure. As I reach my thumb, I'm pinching and I'm pulling up and I'm pulling out. Once again, whenever we make anything, we want to try to go for pinky thick or slightly thinner, but not too thin, so that way we weaken it. We have a lot more clay down here at the base because we need to support everything above it. It's not straight up and down, it is coming out, and if we made it too thin, it would just flop over. Take some water out of the center. We have a little bit of a flat spot, so from here, we're going to use a tool. It's a rib tool, looks like a kidney. The black ones are firmer, the blue ones are a little bit softer. You can choose which ones you like to use. I just wet the piece, as you can see it has some water on it. And what I want to do here is I want to make sure that my curve from my top to the center, back to the other side, is the same. And there's no break in the curve. So I start at my wall here, and I gently slide down. Once I reach where the bottom is, I want to put more pressure because that's where it started to flatten out. Add a little water because the water reduces the friction. It's important that we don't go all the way over to 9 o'clock because it's going to catch our edge. There's a smooth side to the tool and a sharp side. We want to use the smooth side. So once again, I'm going to start at the top, put a little bit of pressure, and as I reach the interior of the bowl, I'm going to put more pressure. You can see it has taken some clay away. I'm going to use my sponge to remove some of the extra water. The best way to figure out if the curve is complete, you can just take your finger and gently slide down. If it catches on anything, or if you feel as though it flattens out, just use your rib tool again. And I'm just going to take my sponge and get rid of some of those lines that were made by the tool. I'm just using the weight of my hand, I'm not pushing down, and I'm cleaning up my curve. What I want to do now is I want to compact my top edge. And by using the sponge in my right hand and gently letting the clay slide through my left hand, which is supporting it, I'm going to push down. I try to make sure that my sponge goes where my hand is so that way I can support it. So you can see how we have water on the outside, it's got a little edge to it. I want to just round that out. So I'm just folding the sponge over, putting a little bit of pressure. It rounds it out so that if you are going to eat soup out of this and you want that last drop, it's a little bit smoother. We have a lot of clay down here, and then we left it there so that way we could support the rest of our wall. Now that we're done working with the wall, we're going to use our wooden tool. Just cleaning it a bit. Then we're going to remove some of this excess clay. You can see the curve that's on the inside, but as you see, it kind of just doesn't really show the outside edge as a bowl. So I'm going to take my tool, holding with two hands over here at 3 o'clock. Then I'm going to start to remove some of this excess clay. I want to try not to take away too much because I still need to support the wall above it. But for the drying process, we want to make sure that it's not too thick or else it'll take longer for that to dry. And then it will be more difficult for us to trim it later. So I'm just trying to take away some. We can start to create the profile of what we want because we're tapering in the bottom, which makes it appear that the outside wall has a little bit more of a curve. You don't have to take away too much at a time. You can always go back and take away more. If you start to collect some clay on the body of your pot, just put your tool up a little bit higher and just slowly go through. Just as I was throwing the piece, I want to make sure that my elbows are supported with my lap, because that is oftentimes when you lose control. Just by taking away a small amount on the outside edge, you can see how the profile of the bowl starts to take shape. I like to create a little notch at the bottom, so when I remove it from the bat, which is the blue plate on the wheel, I create a little notch so that way the wire can kind of just slide right through without me harming the edge. So we've compacted it, we've removed the extra moisture from it, we've removed the extra clay from the outside edge. We're going to turn the wheel off. I take my wire tool, I'm going to wrap it around my fingers, I'm going to place my thumbs up, I'm going to push it down on the blue bat, I'm going to push it down with my thumbs, and then I'm going to make sure that it's nice and tight. I'm going to pull it towards me. I want to reduce the friction between the pieces. I just put the water on the bat, not on the piece. And I'm going to do it one more time. And this should bring the piece, because it has more weight, it's not letting go as much, but we know that it is free because I was able to get the wire out. From here we're going to move it on to a board. We have two boards. We have a laminated board, which is sealed so it won't remove the moisture if you're not going to be trimming it for quite some time. And then we also have a non-laminated board which will pull out some of the moisture. We've cut it free. Now what I want to do is I want to push from the bottom because it has more clay down here and it is stronger. And you can see how it does just slide right off. If it doesn't let go, so that we don't deform the piece, just splash a little more water down and then run it through one more time. You can see I push it off the edge. I can support it at the bottom. And we know that you do have a true bowl when you can see from edge to edge without any bumps.